When we walk together, little children, we will never have to worry. To this world of love, we got to love one another. Take our fellow men by the hands and try to help them to understand. All be together forever and ever when we make it to the promised land. When we walk together, little children.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another week of Sabbath School. This week's lesson is entitled, Your Mercy Reaches Unto the Heavens. This week we're going to look at God's mercy and grace as evidence of God's determination to save us. Our memory text for this week comes from Psalms 57, 9, and 10. I will praise you, O Lord, among the peoples. I will sing to you among the nations. For your mercy reaches unto the heavens, and your truth unto the clouds. When you hear that word for mercy, what typically comes to mind? Well, if you're like most people, you might imagine something similar to that of the Good Samaritan, who, when he saw his enemy lying there beside the road, was moved with compassion. And what he does next is to show his enemy a kindness and a care that the dying Jewish man hadn't earned or even deserved. The Good Samaritan simply did it out of the kindness of his heart. And certainly, helping another person in need is one aspect to mercy. But there's another aspect to mercy, and it's the idea of overlooking, another person's mistakes. In other words, somebody has done something wrong to you, and you decide to forgive them. But more than that, you decide to give them, a second chance. In other words, what they deserved was punishment, but what you chose to give them, it was mercy. They didn't deserve mercy, so why did you choose to give it? Because just like the Good Samaritan, you did it out of the kindness of your heart. Now we come to Sunday's lesson, and we find that all mercy, whether it be compassion, kindness, or forgiveness, are rooted in God's love for humanity. It's God's love that ensures that his mercies are new every morning. Think of it this way. Every day the sun comes up. Every day we wake up and the oxygen is still there for us to breathe. Every day we eat, laugh, play, work, and learn. In other words, every day God provides an environment that ensures that not only do we survive, but we can thrive and live. But there is another mercy that endures and ensures not only our physical survival, but our spiritual. And we call that mercy grace. It means that every day, 24/7, you can count on this one thing. God will do everything in his power to forgive and redeem us. And that determination to save us brings us home because his mercy is so big, it reaches unto the heavens. When I was in grade 6, I got into a fight with one of my fellow classmates. We were sitting together for lunch, and he accused me of hitting his glass and spilling his milk onto the table. Then he proceeded to order me to clean it up. I told him that I didn't hit his glass or spill his milk, and therefore he could clean it up himself. Well, he dipped his fingers into his milk, and then he flicked that milk in my face. I jumped up, I grabbed the bottom of his chair, and I tossed him and his chair over backwards. We both stood up, and we were going to fight, and that's when our teacher, Mr. Reimke, walked in. We followed him back to our classroom, and he ordered us to sit down and not move until he came back. Now let me be clear. What I had in my heart was anger, and in my anger, I was still ready for a fight. And it didn't help that I thought I was going to be punished for a fight that I thought I hadn't started. When Mr. Reimke returned, I had no idea what the punishment would be, but I was certain that there was going to be a punishment. But Mr. Reimke, he had other plans. He walked in and he said, "Boys, I have a problem." And I thought to myself, yeah, you're not the only one. He said, "I have here 2 flavors of ice cream, and I need somebody to eat them. Which one would you like?" My jaw dropped. I looked at my enemy looked at me, and we were so confused, we actually started offering each other the first choice of the ice cream. And true to his word, we two boys got to eat the ice cream. I can't think of a better example of wisdom, mercy, and grace than what I experienced that day. You see, if you had searched my heart in that moment, you would have found anger and war. I was out to get even. I wanted an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, even if I had to knock it out myself. And that's what you would have found in my heart that day. What did I deserve? I deserved punishment. But what I received was not a reward for my sin. It was mercy and grace that exposed my sin and at the same time saved me from continuing in it. God's grace is not about excusing sin or overlooking it or rewarding it. It's about exposing our sin for what it is so that when we experience mercy, it moves us so much, it changes us. Mr. Reimke didn't give us what we deserved. He gave us what we needed. And on that day, the person who started out as my enemy eventually became one of my best friends. David turns to God and he cries out, "Oh God, search me and cleanse me." And how did God cleanse David? Not by giving him what he deserved, but by giving him what he needed. A mercy that is so big, it even reaches heaven itself. They say that an elephant never forgets. Research tells us that once an elephant sees a face, they will remember it for the rest of their lives. As a matter of fact, not only do they remember a face, but they will remember how they were treated by that person. For example, if you treat them with kindness, they will love you forever. But if you harm them or another elephant that they care about, they will never forget, and apparently, they don't easily forgive. And as such, elephants will hold a grudge for a very long time if you wrong them. In other words, elephants are quite capable of keeping a record of wrongs done to them. So while they can love you forever, they can also hate you forever. And we human beings, well, we're no different. We have very long memories, and sometimes we can hold on to a grudge for so long that we can even pass it along to our family members, well, for generations after. This is one of the reasons why some countries never stop warring against each other, because they have literally passed down a record of wrongs from one generation to the next. I've been to churches where some people held on to anger so long they hadn't spoken to each other for more than 10 years. Now imagine how much more God could hold on to a grudge if he wanted to. With a mind like his, God is capable of remembering everything forever. I mean, after all, God's memory is eternal because God is eternal. If God wanted to, he could literally hate somebody forever. And this is the point of today's lesson. God is not into holding a grudge. David knew this when in Psalms 51 he asked God to search him. He knew what God would find there: lust, lies, adultery, deception, and murder. It was all there for God to see. And what does David do? He not only asks God to forgive, but to forget. Now, I can understand why David would ask this. He asked it because he was guilty, and he knew it, and he knew what he deserves. So what does he do? He throws himself on the mercy of the court. He asked for mercy, and what does he get? Mercy. He got exactly what he asked for. Not because he deserved it, but because God was determined to save David. If God had given David the justice he deserved, David would have been lost forever. But the plan of redemption is not to seek and destroy, but to seek and to save. And fortunately for David, and for all of us, God is the God of second chances. Because his mercy is so big, it reaches all the way up into heaven itself. I remember the first time I saw the Niagara Falls up close and personal. Not only did I see them, but I could feel them. The falls are some 57 meters in height, and they are 670 meters wide. The water traveling over the falls does so at a speed of 45 kilometers an hour. They say that on any given day, some 6 million cubic feet of water spills over the top of the falls every minute. It's so powerful that it actually makes the earth shake. But what makes the Niagara Falls so majestic is that they are not only powerful, but they truly are a thing of beauty. So now we come to David, and he's looking at God, and David can't get over just how majestic God is. First, God is powerful. After all, David looks up at the vastness of space, and he sees all of the stars and planets, and he can't help but think how powerful God has to be to create all of it. Then David takes a look all around, down here, and he sees sunsets and oceans. He sees mountains and valleys, flowers and trees. He sees days that are filled with sunshine and warmth, and days that are filled with raging storms. And he realizes that everything exists and works because an all-powerful God created and set in motion the world in which we live. After all, how powerful must God be if he can speak the sun, which burns at 15 million degrees Celsius, and can heat the earth from 150 kilometers away? I mean, how powerful do you have to be to speak that into existence? God literally used his own energy to create that. From a power perspective, that's majestic. But for David, there was something even more majestic, and that was the beauty of God's character of love. When David experienced God's love through mercy and forgiveness, it moved him to deeper levels of worship. I think Jesus said it best when he said in Luke 7:47 that those who are forgiven much, they love much. And this was true of David. Not once, but time and again, God forgave David. And each time David was moved to a deeper level of worship, because at its heart, worship is expressing our love for God to God. And the more David was forgiven, the more mercy he experienced, the more majestic God's character of love became. And the sinner who was forgiven much, loved much, because God's mercy is so big, it reaches into heaven. How majestic is our God. I have a friend who loves crows, and apparently they love him back. Every morning he goes outside, and there waiting for him are the crows. They say that crows can not only distinguish one human face from another, but they remember people and are capable of forming friendships. Okay, back to my friend. Every morning he goes outside, and there waiting for him are the crows. They know that every morning my friend is going to bless them by giving them, something to eat. That food helps to ensure, their survival. Now, here's the thing. One day my friend noticed that there were little bits of what he thought were garbage all over the front of his yard. And he couldn't figure out how the garbage got there. Turns out that it was the crows that were bringing him, not garbage, but gifts. Now let me ask you, did my friend demand that the crows bring him gifts in return for the food? No, he didn't. Did he demand that they like him in return for the food? No, he didn't. The crows simply responded to my friend's kindness with gratitude. The Psalms should truly challenge us. Think about it. If crows can show gratitude to those who show them kindness, then how much more should we human beings appreciate the loving kindness and mercy of God? David challenges us to look at the manifold blessings and all of the benefits that are given to us by God, to consider how it is that God longs to add value to our life, and then he asks, how can we not love and worship a God who loves us like that? So where do we start? We start by doing what the psalmist calls us to do. Remember. Remember who God is, his love for us and all of his mercy and kindness, and let that inspire you to go to church this Sabbath and worship the one whose mercy, blessings, and grace reaches even to the heavens.
Thank you, Lord.